Going live. All right, we're live. Hi, Jen. Hi, John. Welcome to join us tonight.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, hey.
How are you?
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone in front of the screen and in the audience group. Welcome to join us tonight, and welcome to Area Connecting, the second episode tonight. So tonight, we will great to have John and Jennifer joining us in talking about the daily operations from both the product management as well as the revenue perspective. So to those who is your first time or not familiar with Lair's Labs, we are an investment-driven accelerator based in New York City and helping dedicate to international founders or founders of immigrant or international background. Our 10 weeks program dedicated to help you connecting with the USA market first, and it was potential bridge to the Asia area. So the whole Lair's Labs story start with beginning with 4 co-founders. Simon Chang, who is currently running the Punjab Capital, and Lee, who's co-founder and the CEO at RenHop, who actually was the fundamental architect of the accelerator program because he graduated with a startup from Y Combinator from 2009. And we also have Epan, who is currently travel a lot and become angel investor between Singapore and China. And as well, Michelle, who has a rich experience in the Big Four, corporate finance, and the helping public company. So yeah, so they start the story really helping startups join, and they're located in New York City, and this is our hub. So in the past few years, we being quite like working hard, and now we decide to actually doing a few serious events to actually work in the community and join more. And as part of in the beginning, everyone has been impacted by the COVID, and there's a lot of downsides and economic uncertainties. So in May, we actually kick off a series of pitch competition. They're helping founders from global-wise to connect with potential resource and partner in the Asia area. So in the Supernova series, we screen more than 1,000 startups, invite more than 20 venture capital judges and investors, hosted across 5 pitch sessions in total with audience and from China, Asia, as well as the USA and Europe, with more than 20,000 views. So it's quite well-known and helping a lot of founders connect with the right resource and the network. And to continue the momentum, we are launching Area Connecting. So it's a community that focuses on providing constructive value and knowledge to young professionals, aka like people like in front of the screen of you, founders who are seeking resource opportunities. So if you are looking for anything we can help, please do not hesitate, ask questions or reach out us through our website. We're happy to help and being there for you guys. So quick rundown about Area Connecting. This year, we're going to dedicate in 2 different topics, crossing from 2020 to 2021. So in the connecting new era, we will focus more in bridging topics in around what happened during the COVID, what's going on moving forward from the pandemic. And during the connecting diversity, we will bring up more founders from diverse backgrounds in conversation talking about the career, fundraising, startup ecosystem, addressing to the diversity related topics. So join us and stay tuned. We have a series event coming up, and this is our second episode, how to adjust daily operations to the COVID realities. Moving forward, we will be more topics about covering the adjustment in the consumer, software, all relate to the COVID and the pandemic and how to pivot and shifting going forward in the new era. So yeah, so this is a quick rundown, and I hope you guys enjoy the press event. And if you don't, tonight's a great night to get started. You never miss anything. So for next, I would like to introduce tonight's speaker. Tonight, we are honored to have 2 amazing people. They are seasoned entrepreneur founders working in the well-known startup experience. So first, let me introduce John. John is a tech executive that loves to scale companies. He has experience build products, and currently is the chief product officer at Privco. It's a private company, intelligence and the service company. So John started a career about 19 years ago, so quite a season there, and in the mobile product data experience, working in multiple industries or in the Fortune 100 companies. So his strategy and his expertise rely on the strategic insight to the executives across different diverse industries. He has worked at Goldman Sachs, Bridgewater Associates, Deloitte, and the Harts before starting his entrepreneurial ventures. And he has also been featured in podcasts, speaking regularly at different forums about innovation, social impact, and the art of human interaction and technology. And our second speaker tonight, great honor to have Jennifer. So Jennifer currently the Chief Revenue Officer at the Connatix, a video platform serving publishers across content and advertising. Jennifer manages sales, accounts, and marketing functions. She began her career in banking at the Lehman Brothers, joined early-stage e-commerce startups thereafter, and also spent the last decade in advertising, in marketing, in various commercial growth leadership roles. And outside of work, Jennifer is proudly a co-founder of a nonprofit called Givology.org that provides education grants to grassroots international students and organizations, which is quite inspiring to me as a personal case. And the last, Jennifer also want to put a note that she's also a mom of 2 boys, and they're proud to be one. So yeah, so welcome John, welcome Jennifer, and quick rundown for tonight's agenda. So we're gonna probably spend an hour to dive into topics, and some questions we have organized as well as like collect from the audience during the registration process, as well as we're gonna move on. If you have any questions, please use the submit question button in the bottom of the screen, and we will try to stream more questions if the time allows. And after that, we will invite 2 founders during our tonight for the 1-minute pitch. Each of them will have about 1 minute to present ideas in front of the screen to the speaker and to the audience in front of the screen now. And feel free to engage with them, and we'll do Q&A afterward. And then we're gonna wrap up along by 8 o'clock. So yeah, so once we get started, John and Jennifer, are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Cool. Right. Awesome. Welcome to join us tonight. So yeah, so I think tonight's topic will dive in more since from you guys' perspective from more like product as well as need. So each of you come from the software type company, and just curious about like how that, if you guys don't mind getting started, sharing more about how the pandemic in the past few months has impacted you guys daily, like day-to-day lives, right? And what did you do in person or your company do in terms of strategy help you going through the kind of scenarios?
Sure. I guess I can start. We actually moved out of our office around mid-March. Even before mid-March, we did a lot of preparation because we heard about this thing called COVID. It wasn't really taken seriously in January, but February you start preparing, right? Given my experience in corporate culture, there's always an advanced staging or advanced planning in terms of like your business continuity planning, right? So it was really helpful to have that experience. Working with a lot of great people at Privco is just kind of really focusing on a couple of things, right? How do we make ourselves operationally savvy, operationally lower our operation risk, right? We got to double down on things from a product perspective and create things that make a good meaning, right? Great products for customers and understanding the customer success journey, right? Out of COVID and how do we kind of navigate through that is really, it's really about lowering your risk and understanding where are those gaps that needs to be filled and when, where specifically you need to attack them.
Great. Feel free to carry, Jennifer. You got anything to share?
Yeah, I think COVID has been very similar to like the 5 stages of grief, if anyone knows that, for me. And if you don't, I did have to look it up before in case I messed up the exact phrasing, but it is denial and isolation, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So the first thing that happened in COVID was we were denying that it would last. We thought, hey guys, come to the office, right? Like no big deal, just be careful, business as usual. Let's not reforecast revenues, right? Like let's not panic. Right, that was like early March. Then schools started shutting down, right? Like the wider economy started to nosedive, and immediately saw anger, right? So it's like we were really pissed that we didn't see this coming. We didn't make preparation. A lot of people internally were just like in panic mode. Maybe not so much anger. I would kind of replace it with panic. Then commercially, we started to, especially where I sit, we started to bargain with what's the reality, right? Like I'm the chief revenue officer. I'm telling my CEO and my board, I don't have forecast visibility. I can't produce numbers. I literally have nothing to work off of. But meanwhile, like, you know, there's other people within the organization. They're like, well, that's your job. Like, do your best. Push, like push sales. Right. So that's bargaining stage for me. And probably for any sales leader. I called a lot of my friends. They were all going through the same thing. Salespeople were negotiating their quotas. Revenue owners were wondering what to do about pushing back. Do you cut your number? Do you not cut your number? And then, you know, I think personally, and like from a management perspective, this is when the next stage hit, which was around June, maybe a little earlier, like May, April, where people were just depressed. Like people were really bummed. They were in just like very isolated modes where they didn't want to communicate with their managers. They didn't want to, like talk to each other about their projects. So we really struggled in May with just internal communication, or maybe a little bit like April, May. And changing our process for getting information flow up, back and forth, up and down. And then finally, I think in June, we hit a really good stride. Revenue started to return. And we work in the advertising world, so I do want to caveat this is different per industry, right, potentially. But we started to see it pick back up end of May to June. People started getting comfortable traveling while working. They weren't as isolated anymore. They felt more comfortable kind of telling their managers what they were doing. And as a manager, I felt like we were getting into the more positive mode, probably in like May and June.
Yeah, I mean, some of the comments, yeah, I would agree with Jennifer on this, or Jen, sorry.
Okay.
It's more about, I think for the whole world, you know, specifically in New York City, right? April, May was really tough. It was tough for me, right? It's tough to readjust with everything, especially managing a team of whatever size it is, right? It's just about, like Jen mentioned, is keeping people's attention, right? Making sure that your eye is on the ball and completing specific tasks while being empathetic to their, you know, kind of surroundings and what's happening with the world. So, you know, specifically, one of the kind of cool things that we've done is, you know, because of the uncertainty in this world, in March and April, we kind of let a lot of people just go out and do grocery shopping, right? Because at that point, we didn't know what was a good time to go grocery shopping. Some people didn't want to do it. Some people would do Instacart. But in any case, we would allocate, you know, a random hour of the day where you could just go out and just do your things, right? And also, you know, get some sanity back into, you know, your kind of day-to-day life. But I do want to say, you know, keeping people communicated is very important. Luckily for us, you know, even pre-COVID, we've always been, you know, kind of the get in sync kind of mode, where we would always do stand-ups and, you know, we would always kind of communicate, whether it's on Slack or whatever messaging platform you have. But we always had that culture of having, you know, good communication styles. So as we transition over to kind of a pandemic mode, right? You know, we're still operating quite well up until now, right? It's just more about the revenues, right? Just like, you know, our chief revenue officer had stated, that, you know, like it's very hard to forecast. It's very hard to predict people whether or not they're going to spend Q3, Q4, or even 2021. However, you know, going back to what I mentioned earlier, it's really about focusing on your customers at the end of the day. It's that has never changed since joining Privco. It's really been our focus of, you know, understanding what customers want, but also kind of giving them that white glove treatment of, you know, whether or not you can pay the bills, right? But also whether or not you want this product, you know, going forward. So we work very closely with them. A lot of the best practices. So even for the people who are on this call, if you're building a company, you're building a company from scratch, but you always have to put your customers in first, right? And you always have to build a product that your customers love, right? But ultimately, you have to hand over that kind of experience to them and have that kind of hand-holding experience.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. So actually, I do have a follow-up question to more slightly tailored to each of you that to the role you guys play in your company. So I'm gonna address to Jon first. We'll come back to Jennifer later. So Jon, since you mentioned that you guys basically being kind of interesting shift. So what kind of challenges or maybe problem or obstacles you have to deal with in terms product development, product management, not just with the whole cycle, but with the whole team, right? Because let's say in the previously designer, UI UX, and the software backend, they can naturally just discuss things, review codes together. Now seems like in the past few months being remote, would you mind sharing more on the side?
Sure.
Some founder maybe on the screen also having the same problem and looking for great smart solutions that can learn from your end.
Yeah, I would say, one of the best principles to have, whether you're in pandemic mode or not, is always take a step back, understand what you're building, and asking for feedback early in the process. So when pandemic hit, we were in the mode of understanding our priorities. Is building what we wanted to build pre-COVID. Should we build the same product during COVID and through COVID, right? So that's where I go back into the customer mode, right? Because customers usually would come back and say, we used to want A, B, and C. Now we want X, Y, Z because of COVID, right? And we were able to kind of pivot slightly, and adjust, to kind of those situations, with COVID. So I would always say, whether you're in the pandemic mode or not, you always have to, to take a step back, understand where your gaps are, right? Your gaps are not necessarily is the chief product officer comes to the company, they want to build a great product and all that other stuff, but is it really meant for the users? Is it really meant for the customers? And that was a challenging part because you have to shift priorities, go back to the users, understanding how to realign those priorities. But more importantly is, getting everyone internally buying into that vision as well. And that was super important as well, because as you change so often, people's mentality sometimes, tend not to always agree, right? Because you keep shifting it, especially, different roles, whether you're a designer or developer, if you keep shifting the boat a little bit, you're going to lose a few folks along the way.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Jon. And the quick circle back to Jennifer. So to Jon's case, that more from product, and to you, the one tackling the value, right? The numbers. How you what kind of problems or challenges you definitely encounter or to share with the audience, and what some tips or strategy you deploy or your company deploy that help you guys adjust the expectation and align the estimated new expectation and then moving forward.
So the question is how to think about revenue forecasting or adjusting revenue strategy.
Yep, you can from the point.
Okay. So there's two buckets, I guess I could kind of frame it in. One, which is new business, and then two, which is existing, right? Which is almost like the flip side of what Jon was speaking about. Jon is thinking about our clients, right? Our clients from a product perspective, are we building the right things for them? Same thing with new and existing. It's our clients, are we supporting them in the service aspect of it enough, which is existing business? Our clients from a new business perspective, so more prospects, are we being sensitive in how we're reaching out? How do we shift our communication strategy externally? How do we shift our brand presence externally? Because it's almost like a flavor of whatever you're doing internally. We struggle with communications internally because everyone has to adjust to a new mode. Our clients and our prospects must be also going through the same thing. So is it really the right time to go have your salespeople make calls? No, probably not, because you're going to be seen as insensitive. You're going to be seen as interruptive. No one wants to hear you pitch when they're worried about their children, right? And are they going to go to school? So we had to really shift that method, which is applicable for both existing and new business. The second thing we had to shift was, of course, forecasting. So with no visibility, but we looked at our pipeline. We realistically took a hard look at, out of this pipeline, how many more leads are viable, like out of existing conversations with our clients, how much of the client business is at risk because of a couple of factors. One is this client really small and probably can't pay their bills, right? That's one profile type on one end of the extreme. And on the other end of the extreme, is this client really large and, like a Google or somebody, right, who has plenty of funds, but they still might screw us because they're like, look, we're big. We don't need to pay. Like you're smaller than us. So like, we're going to hold on to this and you're just going to have to wait. So there's risk on both sides. So how much is that risk factor? And then on the new business side, the risk is really assessing whether or not you think this client has a business. So in advertising, the example would be like Amazon, right? Does this person have a business that's recession-proof and COVID-proof? Or is it real estate? Is it travel? Is it Airbnb, which hurt so badly in the first 2 months? And then now, of course, they're bouncing back because they've pivoted really well. But, who is in your book of business that is COVID targets or COVID, losers? So we did that exercise. We reskinned our pipeline. And in hindsight, it sounds like, oh, this is all very intuitive. But it took us a really long time to get people focused and to ask the right questions, and then having the salespeople be real about their pipeline. Everyone wants to hold on to whatever they've got and want to keep pushing because they're worried about their numbers, right? So you have to really, as CRO, I really have to come up with the innovative pivot of how we're going to talk to clients, which clients to go after, and then also be a little bit kind of like a bullshit caller, right? Like, no, guys, don't tell me your pipeline did nothing. It obviously dropped. So tell me which percentage dropped and why. And you can't always be like, yes, I'll take exactly what you said. You give me your forecast, nothing changed. Great, no problem. And then if you report that back to your CEO or to your board, you're going to look like a fool because it doesn't make any sense. So that's the art of where I sit between field sales and client-facing people, and then my responsibility to tell the truth and the best attempt at that.
Great, thanks so much, Jen, from especially the point I think about really looking to the say from the sales and revenue, really looking at the pipeline that if this forecast doesn't work from that line, there's gonna be a reason, and to dive into that and see the client behind that, if there's gonna be reflection to the reality and help you to really adjust. I think that's great point, kind of like reverse engineering from the other end, looking to that instead of forecast and then test out. So that actually also make me curious about that. That next question actually to both of you. From the strategic, there's a different point that going forward, but in terms of teams, right? I think we all went through a kind of remote experience. How that let's say from the sales and for product, you can go to the whiteboard, just join a meeting, everyone just kind of merging into kind of emergency cooking out every single day. In terms of remote situation, right? Through Slack, through Zoom call, how you guys manage that? You actually team stay in the same pace, same alignment of the direction without getting anyone scattered or not actually just doing their own work and getting lost. Just more curious about the side. I think founders or startup team members in Founder Screen can also learn from how you guys managing the team from product and the revenue going forward.
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was playing around with the toggle. In terms of collaborations, for myself, it's more about documentation. I hate that word and I hate doing documentation sometimes, but it's more about you're remote from a lot of people, right? So how do you keep in touch in terms of the ideas that I need to drop on a piece of paper? Always, going back to that get in sync mode, is always propose to the team what your vision looks like, what's your transparent, give full transparency on what the outlook should look like, right? So an example would be in March, we would say like by June we would hit certain goals, and based on some of the data that we've gotten from customers, some of the product experience that I've come from, this is where I wanted to see. Collaboration, obviously Slack, Zoom, Google Docs, and stuff like that, but it's more about getting your ideas, presenting those ideas. So the way we set up stand-up is, and stand-up works very differently in different companies. The way I like to do stand-ups is not a kind of methodical, like you speak in front of a crowd for 20 minutes and kind of hang up the phone. It's more about, what is the objectives? What are the goals? And then at the end of the week, it's more about the wins and the successes of the company, right? And or their specific roles. Because a lot of the things that I've seen during COVID with a lot of different companies is they lose focus on what are the wins sometimes, because you're more in battle mode, right? Everyone's waking up, grabbing a coffee and going to their desks in the same home, doing the same work, 9 to 5, sometimes even longer because you don't have a understanding of time. But you also lose vision as executives, right? You can't lose focus on your employees as well, right? And that's very important. And I think that's probably the most challenging part, for at least for myself, during the last 6 months, is making sure I don't lose focus on anyone, right? And having those stand-ups becoming more engaging, and more profitable for them, right? Because it's not just, here, you go do something, I'll talk to you in a bit if you did that, right? It's more about, what is the benefit for them versus myself, and how can we collectively get in sync with that.
Yeah, Jen, feel free to in the comments.
Sorry, ping me or talking to the audience about pinging the comment?
Sorry?
I wasn't sure. You said feel free to ping with comments. I'm not sure if you're addressing.
Yeah, to the question. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So trying to remind myself a little bit. This is about positive changes in process, or just how you're doing it on an ongoing basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One is communication again, still having some challenges with that, because I don't think there's a great balance of asking for responsiveness, but also being understanding. So that's my biggest struggle still today as a sales leader, and also just generally as an executive. I think everyone feels this way. You want to be understanding, but where's the line where somebody is not responsive for X amount of time? What's okay to ask? How do you reset your expectations? What we are doing now is, at least on the sales team, and then I also run marketing and accounts. So there's a different flavor to each. With the sales team, sellers are very social creatures, right? Generally, they want to be talked to. They want to share their thoughts. They're more extroverted than introverted. Even if you have an introverted salesperson, they want to privately flush their thoughts out with you. So with a highly communicative bunch, we have 2 check-ins a day, one which is a daily stand-up, but we noticed that 2 check-ins was too much in person or virtually. We switched the second check-in to the afternoon, where we have themes around the second check-in. The afternoon Slack check-in is everyone slacking highlights and lowlights from the day, kind of keeping it light, or you can propose a discussion point, hey, I came across this today, let's share an idea, but it's all through Slack. The morning is an in-person 10 a.m. checkup. Hey, how's your deal yesterday? What's going on? More interactive. And we've kind of been probably more fluid than we should be, but once a week we have a real deep dive pipeline discussion. And then for the other 4 days, Mondays are usually kicking off, how was the weekend? Any things that are top of mind to achieve this week with regards to our spend. So we actually have weekend versus weekday dips and patterns. So we start with that question on Monday. on Friday, we keep it pretty, like Friday, we have a full team discussion with our ops and account management team as well. So it's a little bit different. And kind of in the middle, it's fluid. The stand-ups are very open. Now I'll give you a different perspective. So another mentor of mine who's like a sales-driven CEO told me that, it's very important for responsiveness to be upheld during COVID. So he actually recently, a couple months in, had a stand, like a all hands, and he still does like all hands stand-ups with his exec team every day. And then he also set a very clear expectation with his whole company. I need to see you to be green on Slack. Like, it's okay if you're like juggling certain things, but like Slack is now the new Office FaceTime in some ways. He didn't use the word FaceTime, but that's kind of what he's saying, right? Like, you need to be on Slack, unless you're telling your manager you're not. But like, I treat that as you doing your work in the office. So I thought that was a different perspective. And of course, there's ways to deliver that message so it's not big brothery. But he said that really helped. I kind of going back to the other teams, I don't know how many founders here are more like sales-driven founders, product-driven founders, like operational-driven founders. But I think every single function might have a different flavor of what they like best. I'll give you another example of like an operational method where people are sending, they're sending weekly reports, like in very, very organized structures, like client-related escalations, technical debt, like whatever, like the manager came up with a couple of buckets and everyone's writing their updates on a weekly basis. And then they do kind of a stand-up based on their writing. So that was interesting. Okay. And then my marketing team also has a different style. My marketing team does the dailies, but every day a new person runs the daily. So I really like that because it's a very close-knit team. They all have different functional expertise. So each person who's running their stand-up will bring up more heavily weighted topics in their function. So lead generation, they want to talk about lead generation, get everyone's thoughts on that. Second person is more of a brand expert. So, hey, we're thinking about doing this thought leadership piece. What do you think about this headline instead of that headline? Third person is product marketing. So she's going to go and lead a discussion around, I'm working on this particular topic today. So I want everyone's feedback on product marketing. On my number one topic. So I think those are probably things that will keep going no matter what. Like even if COVID ends, we'll probably still have some element of this check-in method.
Gotcha. Well, I like that you frame that as a check-in method that's kind of like standard and easy to digest. And a quick follow-up question to both of you that since we're talking about team, right, talking about remote collaboration, do you at your level of your position, do you feel that because of the pandemic, a lot of people have been working from home, right? Lack of social interaction, or could be the team member get trapped at home for a long period, right? There are reports like LinkedIn, Wall Street Journal talking about, staying home kind of like a mental stress. And then they will cause like a lack of like concentration, lower in the productivity. Do you encounter that you guys, or maybe your colleague at CXO level, end up being play extra HR role to like checking with the team under you? If yes, like how you manage to add in the kind of HR role while maintain the pace of your own workload moving forward. I think like some founders from our survey that they feel they kind of like what we call like become parenting as well, like because everyone's stressed out and not every single company like big corporate has dedicated like HR office to check in with everyone, especially if like small to mid-sized growth startup. So yeah, if you guys can chime in about those 2 points, will be great.
I have a lot of thoughts on this one because we did not have HR. I don't know about you, John. We did not have HR for the longest time. It was serendipitous timing that we brought in somebody contract only for like January, February to help us with recruiting. And she ended up being amazing in terms of being able to flex into an HR people ops person, not a straight up recruiter. And she is more senior. And she comes from like 20 years of HR experience. So she's like pretty broad. I recommend if you don't have an HR person, that every single executive splits the responsibility to check with not your own team, but the other people's team. Because your team members are not going to tell you the full truth, or at least some people may not. Some people may not be comfortable with that. Even I don't tell my CEO everything. Yeah. I might tell like my COO, right, who is a bit more like tangential to my CEO if I'm not feeling great. So everyone needs a little bit of a buffer. Some things that we started doing to help with mental wellness and just kind of like the people side of things are we, for the first month, did like Slack contests, which sounds a little cheesy, but we found that people were just talking about work and whenever they're calling somebody to talk, it's like strict business all day, every day, right? And it is exhausting, and part of like the fun of being in an office is the work stuff that you get to bond over. So we did contests where everyone was sharing like pictures of their pet, or like, you know, another day there was a contest on like the goofiest work from home setup, and like people would share how they're working. And then, you know, there's nothing else except glory for winning. Like we didn't actually put some money on it, but like it would have been fun to have a little bit of money on it, or like introduce even like a betting element where like, people can bet on their employee, like voting, maybe actually is a better word, like voting on the best employee who they think is going to win, and then revealing something. So like all those things were helpful. Our HR contractor helped with that. And then what we recently also, so that died after like first month, because like there's only so much we can contest on. And then second wave has been more like small team driven. So every team lead, and you know, I run one of the sales teams, but I'm also running like the VP level as well. So like for the team that I run myself, I'm the team lead. And so I'm responsible for thinking about a virtual event. Or what we ended up doing was just like every month we have one team meeting devoted to non-work talk. Everyone's just coming and hanging out. They can have a drink, they can nod, they can bring their family members. Like that's what we started doing at a micro level. And then finally, I think, you know, I always think about, okay, so what is the next phase supposed to look like? Like, what do we do when we've finally gotten comfortable with remote work? And then we're going back. Like, we're somewhat going back. Like, I'd love to hear more thoughts and brainstorm with everybody on how do we deal with that? Because now we're talking about our own version of phase one reopening, because people are tired of being at home. And according to our surveys, like 40% of the people, oh, by the way, surveys are very good if you haven't done it yet. Even if you have like a 10-person team, do something anonymous, you know, try to like really make it anonymous and do a survey. But 40% said they would like to go into the office in some capacity. And our CEO is like the biggest office person. So, you know, it kind of like trickles down. So he's like 10% of the vote. Like if it's like 40% and not majority, he can be that 51%, right? He comes in, he's like, that, like I definitely want it. So he wants to open it back up. So now that's the next phase. Like how do we reduce exposure, help the people who want to come in, but also support and make it okay for people who don't want to come in to get that chemistry with senior management, you know, their colleagues, their own team. So I don't have an answer for that, but that's
I think
everybody I'd love to hear.
It sounds a lot of fun being a team, in my opinion, like games and everything that, you know, anonymous vote. I think that definitely good ideas that people are like, you know, need to buffer to reassure their real opinions, right? Because in the current scenario, there's people feel like being judged in different scenario, and I think your ideas and approach definitely. Also, like, I mean, John, feel the queuing that from your side of story are just quite interesting and curious about like what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, there was one thing that I still kind of say like to founders is that being an entrepreneur, founder, or someone who works in a startup, it could be a lonely life sometimes, meaning that you work a lot, you work so much that you sometimes don't get the right feedback, and you're kind of in this low kind of period of slow growth to to have a higher growth in your startup or your own company. So I've always said, you have to talk more to people like your peers or someone even more senior or even junior to you. So that kind of relates back to pandemic, right? The pandemic, we need to kind of be more people person, right? And we have some challenges, no doubt. There are people that are highly talkative that you can pick up the phone and call them. There are people that are naturally shy that will probably keep being shy or even get more lower than they are in terms of shyness. Those are the people that collectively you need to kind of pull up all together and say, like maybe Jen's ideas. I like some of her ideas in terms of Slack contests. It's not lame, right? It's this kind of engagement, right? It's always about engagement and kind of like tapping the person on the shoulder, saying, hey, I'm still here and you're still here, and this is the world that we live in, and we kind of go through it. But I would always say, the way I do things is reach out to people, not from your team, right? Is by far the best solution, I think. It's because people just want to say something during these times, right? Because we miss the days of going out and kind of talking about work in a bar, right? Or having just going out with your friends and not thinking about how great that would feel right now to go out without wearing a mask or anything like that, and living life the way it was, right? But reality is that, we're probably a year and a half, 2 years away from normalcy again. So, I think just habits, right? Building habits that we built in the last 6 months and forecasting ourselves for the next 6 to 8 months. Not to end on a really sad note, but that's kind of the reality is what is now to next summer, right? How do we learn more from this, and how do we engage better with people, and just, thinking about not even our coworkers, but just like parents and friends, and, doing FaceTime, right? FaceTime is probably the most FaceTime, Zoom, or whatever, or what is this, Crowdcast? It's probably one of the best things that we could all have. Imagine if the pandemic hit before all of these video conferencing tools. What will we do, right? So, we have to take what we have and kind of build off from. Yeah.
Great, thanks so much for you too. I think those tips are something I'm interested even like deploy in my end. Definitely the Slack games, I think it's a great idea. Especially that everyone's been remoting. And sound interaction is also like create bonding and trust, which that you barely can get, like if you don't do anything, just purely work and checking the KPI. So great, thanks so much for you guys sharing again. And moving next, we are probably like tailor more for this interview. It's like some question that we collect from the audience before registration. So first question actually gonna tackle to Jen. So Jen, actually that, if you don't mind, would you mind sharing more about what's changed for the advertisement industry in the past few months, and based on your observation and on your opinion, what other changes will also going to move forward, especially now it's like, like the stock market got crazy and now just tumble today. Things kind of like, nobody know, you think you can predict or things being stable, but not stable again. So yeah.
So ad market and stock market are totally different, not correlated at all. Tech is correlated to the stock market, but not advertising per se. So one thing we pay very close attention to is this metric called cost per milla, CPM, and it is the price of 1,000 views on the internet. So if you load a page 1,000 times, an advertiser is willing to pay a certain amount for it. That nosedived in mid-March to mid-April. When I say nosedive, it was like 60% down.
Yeah.
So we are very much correlated to that. So our revenue pace suddenly dropped, 40, 50%. We still grew our publisher base. So the number of impressions we continue to grow. because we monetize, and I think maybe it's helpful to kind of talk about the business a little bit. We make money when publishers like Hearst, where Jon worked, or Vox, or AccuWeather, if you check weather.com, like anything that you're reading on the internet, when they load a lot of pages, people are reading them, and then advertisers load ads in, right? So if we increase like the number of publishers our technology is on, that increases the volume, but it doesn't increase the price, right? The price continues to drop. So we were trying to really figure out how to get the advertising costs up, which is good for a publisher. But we were noticing that COVID created such a vacuum in the confidence of all the global marketers that they cannot, even if they spent $1 million, nobody was buying because everyone was panicking. So it's, sort of like stock market. And this is the first time I'm thinking about it this way, but like the stock market may be in more of the consumer sentiment, I guess, behind the stock market. So like whether or not people are afraid to buy things is one driver to advertising. So advertising will have more money to like, it will grow if people want to buy more things. The first initial reaction, and you can think about it from a personal perspective, is, oh my God, I don't know what's happening. I don't want to spend more money. I don't want to buy shoes online. I'm not going to buy anything I don't need. I only want to buy staples. So basically like 90% of the ad market is frozen. No one's thinking about anything else but their food. The only things are up: food, alcohol, gaming. Right? Like, no surprise. Everyone's at home. They can spend $1 on a game, and then it starts to add up. Now, the ad market is back up. People are thinking about the future. So it's like, again, another analogy to the stock market. Like, if consumer sentiment is positive, they believe that people will have jobs again. They believe that they will be able to return back to work. They will believe that the government will fund them, which is kind of like the second wave of why ads started to go up. Government money started to come in. It was a stimulus package. Like, the stock market went up. People felt a little bit more positive spending on a pair of shoes because they got a check from the government, or they believe that they will actually get a job and they'll get income again. So now we're benefiting from that second wave of positive sentiment. I'm just afraid that we're going to dip again when we start to get cases. If there's another flu epidemic coming in the fall, people start to lose jobs, government doesn't cut checks anymore, whatever. All that combination of things will hurt the ad market again. If you're a founder, kind of ending on this note, like if you're a founder and you're buying advertising, right, you're on the opposite side of where we are. We lose when CPMs go down. You win as a founder if you can kind of arbitrage that. If you're able to buy ads cheaper because you're in an industry that actually is growing right now, this is the time to advertise. Yeah. And a good example of that is this company called Masterclass. Masterclass raised a bunch of money. They were kind of not that well known before COVID.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I think they spent something like $8 million in like a body thirst, or an insane amount of pumping YouTube ads, like pumping everything, Facebook, YouTube, anything they can like get their hands on, because advertising is so cheap. Same thing with web hosting company, GoDaddy. They were buying a lot. They were hoping that everyone decided to start their own business at home. So it really depends what your business is as an entrepreneur. Business could be an opportunity to buy ads cheap.
Thank you. Well, let's go inside that, knowing that actually from the trends of the ads going cheaper, and there's actually potentially for founders who are looking to like take advantage of that situation, is actually a good time to queue in. So similar question to Jon. Jon, what would be your observation that in your industry that what has been shifted and changed and also moving forward?
Yeah, people are very cautious. When I say people, enterprises, large companies are very much not spending like they used to. And that can mean, whether they're buying big contracts and stuff, buying stuff that they don't use, kind of like what consumers do sometimes. They're looking at some of their existing contracts, whether or not the renewals of those contracts can be cheaper, right? Naturally. So that part of the business, we have to showcase the value in our product, right? And showcase the relationship between the product person, right, and the customer. I see the market as more optimist in that, there's a lot of great opportunities coming out of the pandemic, right? I mean, who would have thought Instacart would have tripled their valuation in 6 months? It's too crazy to believe, but it's not sustainable, right? I think at some point people will go out and do their own shopping again. It's kind of funny. I had this conversation that a lot of people always complain about going to food shopping, but when we didn't have the opportunity to do food shopping, we kind of missed it. At least for me, the ability to kind of like walk around and buy things. But now everything's kind of delivered to you. It kind of removes the people's sentiment of a natural thing to do on a weekly basis. So a lot of things will change coming out of COVID. It will change the way we live, the way we spend our money. But as founders, don't ever give up this opportunity, because this opportunity hopefully will never come again in terms of COVID or any type of pandemic. But think about the opportunity. We had 6 months staying at home without any kind of interruptions in terms of, like, when I say interruptions, it's not necessarily bad interruptions, but more about like, going out with friends and stuff like that. You actually had a lot of me time, right? Understanding whether your business was the right business that you were supposed to run. How did you, for me, how do I change the business? For the last question, I ended up working more hours, being at home, but it also made me kind of figure out how to optimize my life a little bit more, to place the right things in the right, in right places. So yeah, I mean, if I were to take away from this as a founder, or as a founder to the people on the call, it's, really don't be honest about where you are. Build what you believe you're still building, because this is a really great opportunity to build at this point.
Sounds good. Thanks so much. Well, thank you again for both of you again for those inputs in that question. And we're kind of like, we'll circle back to questions that more addressing both, and then we can like give more time to some question from the audience. So as next, what would be some like suggestions that you would like to share to that people in front of the screen who might be in your position, who are CXOs in the growth stage startup, or maybe early stage founders, in terms like team management, sales, revenue, growth in general. I think that's also a lot of questions we kind of like being demanded from the audience side. Yeah.
Jen, do you want to start, or? I can start too.
You can start.
Yeah.
So much here.
Yeah, it is so much. I think it's, going back to that last point, it's, you really have to know the market, and the market is changing, right? What you were building in January is very different. You cannot build the same thing. Like even look at Airbnb, right? Their valuation was highly reduced. They're still a kind of a company where you can buy co-sharing places and so forth, but they changed their model in a way where they created experiences, created different classes where you can take online to adapt to the pandemic life. And they will have to continue to do so going into the IPO space, right? And the same with my company, and the same with any founders. It's like, if you create something and you really believe in it, you still have to understand that there's got to be a change in the market, right? Unless you're telling me you're creating a delivery kind of company, right, for cat food or dog food or whatever, right? But it's also like, especially in the consumer product space, right? consumer spending is way down. Like Jen mentioned, gaming is one of the bigger things. Unless you're a game developer, I would say you would have to rethink about what your consumer product fit is and whether or not it fits in today's world, whether it's from the pricing perspective, whether it's the market fit perspective, because the consumer space, as an example, is very capital heavy, right? You don't want to make mistakes, especially in this kind of environment.
Great. John, do you have any let's say specific kind of in terms from strategic thinking, from some certain tips or tools that you will suggest or recommend for people in the product management position that easier to deal with the situation and moving forward?
Yeah, I would say obviously we mentioned Slack and all the known ones, right? But I would invest in something like a product management tool, right? It could be Asana, it could be Monday.com or whatever, right? But you have to get your thoughts down, right? As a product guy, your thoughts you should be collecting thoughts on a daily basis. You should probably have around 20, 30 thoughts or feedback from a customer that you need to organize and to provide a vision, whether you're a founder or not, right? A vision going forward for whether it's 3 months, 6 months, 9 months or not. And in hindsight, during COVID, 3 months sometimes sounds like 3 years, right? Especially the March, April, and May timeframe, right? But you really have to plan on what you hedge your bets on in terms of how the society will change and adapt to your product. So get a lot of investment. If you're going to spend money as a founder and you probably don't have a lot of money, especially early stage, I would say spend money on really tools that can help you build out a really great platform and strategy. Mind mapping tools, organization tools. Go to Google, go to Microsoft. They're providing free credits. AWS provides free credits for all the tools and kind of productivity applications as well. So try to be resourceful. It's a long-term game, right? Don't spend all your chips in one game, right? Just make sure that whatever was budgeted pre-COVID, whether you have 3 months runway, is probably going to be 1.5 month time runway. So always try to keep yourself on your toes and be productive in that sense.
Got it. Thanks. Yeah, Jen, feel free to keep in if you are ready. Yeah, I know it's a lot, so feel free that if you need a moment to reconstruct the thought.
Having gone first to give me a little time. So I think the theme of change is constant, has always been true when you're at a fast growing startup. But with COVID, I think we're entering into a whole new arena of change. So these are systemic societal changes. So not only do you have to change how you do things for your clients or identify even which clients to go after, you also have to change things internally on how you run the business and communicate to people and motivate people. And sort of, it's more complex to be a manager during and post COVID as the people themselves are changing so quickly and how they're thinking about their jobs, they're thinking about their life. So it's just something to keep in mind. I as a sales leader specifically, it's such a mental game. And I've seen salespeople who, totally demotivated and just get out of the funk, and then they become a and it's very mental how you motivate, inspire, and just be there for them, and using the carrot and the stick methods with progression. Second is around forecasting. So I think in people in similar positions, like your revenue-driven CXO, you really have to off of less reliable data. And I think that maybe the best way to present information is to do it in cases, like worst case scenario, best case scenario, normal case scenario, but then what we did for our board members also really bad COVID case scenario, or like where this is if the sky completely falls again. So maybe like tell the story a little bit differently. Everyone will be understanding of that. It's good to be ahead of it and give people a reason why you're so nervous around committing to a certain number. Talk about it head on. And then in terms of growing teams and scaling, which is what we all can go back to one day, and that's where you're all sitting as entrepreneurs. If you are in the position where you want to scale, I think scaling the revenue organization, lesson learned here is you want to be a little bit more conservative in how fast you hire salespeople, just because they're very expensive. And also, there's a lot more noise in the market now, where like a lot of people have been laid off, a lot of sellers are available. Being able to really define, going back to like what Jon said, like being able to really define who your target market is anymore, like what product is it really in the post-COVID world, like being able to define that will help you better target your talent pool, because I've just found that there's a lot of people with good stories and a lot more noise.
Gotcha. So great. So do you guys see any like as a last, I think like there's all really concrete suggestion ideas that I think people in front of the screen that could be benefit and adapt to from team management and the product. Do you guys see any or like have any like interesting like pivoting cases to share? Could be from your personal observation, come across from the work, or like from the news that from both the product or company direction, as well as to like sales team, how they pivot, or like product team, how they pivot in general. Just like when you want to put this question as a kind of wrap up, case study usually is a good example for learning and to take insight into. It could be from your internal team experience, or it could be some like external from your company, as long as you feel comfortable.
Is it, you said pivot?
Yeah.
Okay. Pivot, I'll talk about our company product pivot, I guess, or like more of a business pivot. So we have two lines of business. One, which is very dependent on advertising and people spending high space on publishers. We call that our media monetization business line. And then we also have a like tech SaaS business line, which is the video itself. So think like YouTube, but YouTube is something that lives with Google. You can now use like a player on your website as a software to run videos. We used to want to be very aggressive in going after that SaaS line of business, going after the biggest publishers that everyone reads today, right? Like going to your weather.com, which you check the weather, or like your news, like Hearst magazine, and then maybe you go to your site, like for the Condé Nast, and say, we're going to replace your SaaS software. We want to aggressively buy you. We pivoted away from that because we realized how hard we would spend money and time on that. It was going to be something that was a big cost center decision. And if they're really comfortable with, if the publisher is really comfortable with their existing solution, it's a very big disruption to rip out like a video software. And people want to reduce change and reduce headache, and there's less people staff at a lot of these organizations to try to do that. The money of hiring senior people to help break open the door to hiring more junior salespeople, because we are not sure that, like, at least for this year, we're not sure if it might come back one day, but we're certainly not going to hire somebody really senior, really expensive to try to break open that when the world isn't really open to this type of value proposition right now. That's a business sales pivot. Another pivot we are making, sort of on the marketing front, is we were thinking for a long time of like, well, I guess the sales and marketing, but we wanted to go into we wanted to go into Europe in a really big way.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's not. I wouldn't call it a pivot. It was just like a decision to do it differently. So it's an adjustment to the go-to-market plans because now we're thinking, can we do this? Like, let's not go all in. Let's go like hire a few trusted consultants, marketing and sales, put them on the ground for Q4, and like tread very carefully. They don't. So the thing about Europe, given that this is potentially an international crowd, Europe has a very strict labor clause where if you hire somebody and they pass the 3-month probation period, you can't fire them unless you give like some crazy amount of severance, like 6 months or something like that. And you also have to put them on a performance plan for like a year, like a very long, it'd be like maybe like 6 months and then 6 months, where you really can't get rid of someone if they're performing well for over a year. That's usually like the average. So if you think about that for a small company, you have to take that burden on yourself, and the person's not even producing for you. So as a sales leader, like I definitely hate that distraction to my team because that person's kind of dead weight. First off, bad morale, and then you can't really like have the budget to replace them because it's still in their P&L. So that's like another whole reason of like being a lot more risk averse in how we do for global now.
Thank you. Got it. That's an interesting case, especially about the Europe case. I think there's some founders who actually also from Europe, so I think they might actually align and echo with that. So yeah, John, like, is there any other like interesting cases you've been observed in terms of like from the product perspective or business direction? It could be within your company or could be like some cases you come across that you think could be an example to share.
Yeah. I think the magic word of the day is pivot, especially in the pandemic. But like going back to my point, right there, the rate, kind of like the rate of acceleration in the way technology is in the last, 6-7 months has been more so in the last 2 decades for some industries, right? So that makes me feel that there's room to pivot, like whether you're moving to Europe, a business to Europe, whether you're changing kind of a B2B type marketing to more of a B2C marketing. But I wanted to step up in front and say, like Jen's comment about sales, right? Sales are expensive, right? You have to understand what the return on investment is. And in today's case, in the last 6 months, the enterprise or the corporate markets budgets have been kind of frozen. They probably won't be opening up until like Q4. And by Q4, you know what happens. So you really only have about 2 or 3 months there because you have Christmas and Thanksgiving. So everyone's kind of like sweeping under the rug and it's like, see you 2020 and here's 2021, right? So you have to really play it very distinctly on what pivot you are making and whether that pivot is going to be extended to a 2021, right? There's no short pivots here. When you do a pivot, it's got to be at least at least 8 to 12 months to say that.
Got it. Thanks so much, John. So yeah, thank you again for both of you guys' input. I think due to like time limit, we definitely love to. There's actually like some questions that from the live audience right now. So I think we'll pick one and then move forward from that. So question number 1 from James, asking about any tips on building new teams during COVID and aligning visions for everyone while remote. So I think if I break it down right, it's like if you guys can continue sharing, James asking that, do you guys hire new teams or build up new teams for new goals? And for those remote kind of like onboarding process, as well as like people barely know each other or see each other in person, how you guys like make sure the new team is aligning together?
We hired. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
This is really topical. We actually hired 3 people in the pandemic, and we're still interviewing right now. So I'll start with the interviewing and in general. So I think you're going to find that people are surprisingly more responsive right now. in the market, it's pretty active. I've got some headhunter friends and some people who are also similarly managers, and they're saying that reaching out usually is then it's your first impression as a company and as a hiring manager, how that interview process is run. So that was a big lesson learned for us, and we kind of unfortunately did not get our ducks in a row well, and we had a couple of candidates that probably didn't have great experiences, but we learned from that, where you want to be buttoned up, right? You want to have, even if you have to do like one-on-one, like if you do like 5 different separate one-on-one time slots, gather that range of time from your candidate, and then go back to them with everything like in a row. Don't kind of like pepper them with here, oh, let's reschedule it. Like that happened a little bit too often in the beginning for us. And we also didn't really prep the interviewers properly on how to conduct a virtual interview.
Hello?
Interviewing as well, but let's like set the right tone. And then in the onboarding, I think the couple of things that we just learned, I'll try to go quickly, is one, again, going back to the theme of like being buttoned up, we had to redo our deck to and like really listed out the key people you have to meet, because usually you have like organic meetings in the office. That doesn't exist anymore. So we put a whole section into our onboarding deck of X number of minutes with this person, and it's the responsibility of the manager to set that up. So like you're not leaving your newbie kind of like stranded, trying to like bashfully ping somebody to get a meeting. And then also another thing that changed in onboarding was we did, for sales, remote pitching. We usually have everybody in a room, like in person, but now it's like, how do you replicate that environment? Especially since clients are going to be in that environment. So we really added like training. You do like the last one in a group pitch. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think so. It just kind of like, so John, feel free to.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think for interviewing and onboarding, it's very different. We're going through that right now. We have a couple of interviews in place. It's very different. Tech kind of developer kind of, we give online tests. Salespeople, I think that was a great idea. Like just have the kind of like a remote, interview in terms of pitching style. But in terms of kind of like where you need to kind of grow your team, I would say, it's always about culture, right? Whether your culture is remote, whether you're hiring someone from Alaska or not, it has to fit within the company's vision and the focus and the progress forward, right? I think you can easily figure that out over a number of calls or video calls, whatnot. Video is always more personable. Sometimes you just not, especially for an interview, I think you can get that person to show up on video, right? Or they'll make whatever makeshift office, Zoom backgrounds to get to the right interview in place. So I think it's adaptable. I think it's just more, for me, it hasn't really changed other than process. Hasn't really changed in terms of the quality and what we're looking for, from Privco side.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. So, Jen, actually, I think this is like kind of like broken off, and I think we point from your perspective. So, thank you again for both of you guys like chewing and wrapping up on the questions and the input and the sharing. And also, thank you, James, for the question. I think that was quite an interesting question that definitely a lot of people in front of the screen, either as founder or in the startup team, wondering that how that works in terms of like new team building moving forward. So as next, we kind of wrap up tonight's like discussion. So next, we actually going to have our that session called 1 minute pitch. Quick background to those who are interested in applying or not familiar with what we do in terms of 1 minute pitch. So we've been going to hosting different series events throughout the rest of the year, and we decide that since we can generate traffic and the inviting speech and speaker joining us, sometimes they are like investors, some they are founders, some they are CXOs like Jon and Jen, who can share and provide great constructive feedback. So we decide to invite founders who are in the early stage and need exposure and need feedback. Just because now, like New York City used to have like 30, 40 events in tech every single day I've been jumping to across the United States, but now they barely own these locations. So 1 minute pitch is of a founder to give them the chance to expose and to speak to an audience, demonstrate their product ideas, and potentially helping them generate the leads and the traffic. So tonight we're going to have two speakers from two teams. They are both like the CEO and the founder of their team. So first, we're going to have Marco. Marco is from the European startup called Lair. So Lair is building an AI-powered car sharing app that is going to help founder and people in the company to rent and lease vehicles in a simple, reliable, and innovative way. So hey, Marco, feel free to start your 1 minute pitch, and when you're ready, and we'll move to the Q&A with the speakers.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you, Kev. Can you hear me well?
Yep.
Yeah, great. So hello, everyone. Just a second. I am trying to share the screen with you. Okay. Can you confirm that you see the presentation?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, great. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Marco Filippi, CEO and founder of Volvero. The perfect storm in transportation industry is here, and I am referring to the fact that there is a high underutilization of vehicles. Indeed, the car dealers are not able to sell vehicles anymore, while there is a huge community of millennials out there that are not buying the vehicles anymore. So the solution is an app for connecting dealers or owners in order to let them to share vehicles with a community of drivers. We are not the only one in the market. We do have some competitors, but we are unique because the technology that we are using and also the insurance policy that we created from the scratch. So the insurance policy is part of our IP and allows us to be in the position for scale up since our partner is an international partner, and the technology that we leverage is based on AI and also distributed ledger in order to create a reliable source of information and improve user awareness. We have done some accelerators. We are part of the startup school and also of Y Combinator, and also we have run a pilot in Europe recently. We are ready for the commercialization. The team, of course, there are a lot of skills involved, and we are here today because we are soon raising our seed round. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Marco, founder and CEO of Volvero. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Marco. So yeah, Jon, Jen, feel free making comments or any question you have in terms of Marco's speech. And Marco also, to find out that is actively looking to enter the US market as well.
Yeah, I can start. So I do a lot of research on private companies and kind of, founders and entrepreneurs. And, when we talked about, the right platform for the right time, it sounds like you're hitting that spot, right? A lot of people are not buying cars. A lot of people are stuck at home and wanted to, I always call it the COVID mobile, right? The COVID protection mobile, where they wanted to drive away, whether it's with a family or just by yourself for mental wellness, right? And this is kind of one of the expenditures that people, when they're saving money at home during the pandemic, will probably spend in terms of renting or renting a car or just buying a used car for that matter. One of the industries, RVs, a lot of people are buying RVs to travel across the country. And obviously not everyone can afford an RV. It's very expensive. But certainly if someone wants to buy a used car, with its platform, I think it's a good use case. In terms of feedback, I thought it was concise, in terms of a one-way pitch.
Thank you for the feedback.
Right.
Thank you, Jon.
Yeah, I think the timing was really spot on. Right around a minute. I think the slide that we blew through, which might be a selling point, might not be sure, is the slide around the background of your team. What makes you position to tackle this problem? Because when you're pitching early stage investors, they're going to want to know about you, right? Like the market size. I don't know if you actually wrote that into the pitch deck, but you said like 90% of millennials, don't own cars, right? Or I forgot that stat, right? But what does that mean in terms of like the market? Just because they don't own a car doesn't mean they won't in the future, maybe, right? Like especially post-COVID. So why is this a good economic challenge? And then back to your background. So I think I caught it very briefly, but that's what makes you credible too, right? Why are you the best position to tackle this problem?
Back, Jon.
Yeah. Sorry, Michael. Marco, I think you kind of mute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Now better. Yep.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, maybe a question. Yeah, a question here. You're trying to enter the U.S. market. What are kind of the challenges you see, coming from, outside the U.S. coming into the U.S.? What are the things that you feel like you can fill in the gap with your platform today?
Yeah, great question. So I think that we can really take advantage of the fact that American market is already a bit educated on this kind of service, because there are two competitors in the US, while in Europe there are no major competitors. So I think that the fact that there is some competition in the market in the United States help us to be much more effective with also our scale-up process and go-to-market strategy in the US. We are thinking about it since a bit of time. Indeed, I already spent nearly 1 year in the United States. So we think that the next big step will be to enter the United States market.
Got it. And in terms of like the scale up, going to the US market and connecting those dealerships, right, together is a huge task, right? Have you thought about how you would enter the market that way? And how are you going to get those connections?
Yeah, so part of the connection we need were already developed during the last year of me doing a lot of networking, both in the Midwest and in the Bay Area, San Francisco. Of course, then we need to grow also our network in the US, but we saw a huge potential for pure organic growth, because now car dealers and also car rentals are trying to innovate and to move to a much more digital business, and we are in the position for delivering what they are looking for. So for us, it's also very easy to onboard this kind of users.
Okay. Got it. Thanks.
Well, sounds great. Well, we're kind of like got time's up. Sorry about that. So we have another thing moving forward. So Marco, thanks so much for joining us. I know it's like 1:30 in your end. Appreciate that input and great to have you. I hope you stay safe there. And for everyone who in the audience stage interested in learning more about Marco's startup, we just post the website, and Marcus, feel free to queue in your contact information if you'd like to get more leads from the chat. So yeah, thank you again, Marco.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Yeah, take care. Have a good night. So next, we are going to have Madison. Hey, Madison.
Hi.
So, yeah.
Hi. Okay, cool.
So we are going to have Madison. Madison is building. We're quite inspiring that technology company that's like transform the entire system of like sexual assault prevention, care, and justice. So I'm not gonna be the founder taking note. I will leave the mic to Madison. So Madison, feel free to cue in and to share the screen if you need it. We are ready.
No, it's gonna be all me. All right, hi, I'm Madison Campbell, founder of Lita Health, a company built for survivors by survivors. I'm a sexual assault survivor who didn't report. 77% of survivors nationwide don't report for various reasons, which means that they do not capture time-sensitive DNA evidence to prove that they were innocent. Perpetrators continuously destroy lives before justice is ever achieved, enabling institutions to ignore those who are hurt the most, hiding behind their reputations versus getting justice. Not to mention, survivors have not received care during COVID-19. They have been considered non-essential patients. They have been turned away from hospitals. The process of collecting evidence is re-traumatizing, has absolutely no technology whatsoever. It takes 4 to 8 hours long to complete it, and survivors completely avoid it. Our lead product is the first ever at-home rape kit. We are utilizing patent-pending tamper-proof devices, blockchain to maintain chain of custody, and it can be completed in under 15 minutes. We offer emergency contraceptive. We partner with Plan B, STI testing, as well as services like support groups, providing holistic care independently of the institutions that fail survivors. Each survivor costs the United States $130,000, making the total market for innovation billions just in the US alone. We empower survivors with the tools needed for justice and recovery. The market has neglected this area, and we are here to stand up for survivors. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Madison. So John, Jan, feel free to chip in with questions if you have any or comments.
That was very passionate. That's a strong suit of yours that you lived it, you know it. That's definitely an advantage in pitching it. Very dynamic, so use that to your advantage as well. Any competitors? Anybody trying to tackle this issue? Anybody who failed? What would you say?
Yeah, we've heard from, when we started off, we talked to defense attorneys, district attorneys. These are ideas that they were coming up in law school 10, 15, years ago, and no one ever decided to disrupt the system. The system is very politically charged. Within the first month of our company, we sent out a letter to every single college president. We're a B2B company. And within that month, one of the college presidents we sent it out to was Michigan State University. They were pretty mad after hiding the Larry Nassar scandal and sexual assaults that happened on their campus, that they sent it to the Attorney General of Michigan, who then issued us a cease and desist letter. And within 1 month, we got 16 cease and desist letters, 5 subpoenas, 13 members of Congress that reached out to us, and 2 bills introduced to try to ban us. So we've created quite a political moat, and we're disrupting something very big. So we have not had competition.
I would use that, by the way. I mean,
yeah, I love it.
Sometimes at a young stage, any PR can be turned into a good PR, especially with like a mission-driven goal. I think that's I think about it as an opportunity.
Yeah, great pitch. It certainly was a powerful pitch. I think it was concise, and in terms of this type of kit making available to a lot of young women is very important, right? In terms of how accessible this kit is there a specific cost to this kit, and how because I'm thinking, like, if this kit would be, to any type of demographic, right? Some people couldn't afford it. Obviously, you have some privacy to it with a seal, right? Especially in this traumatic event, right? What is the commercials around it?
So we're a B2B2C company. We sell to institutions such as corporations, colleges, universities, military, or even nonprofits to distribute. We don't want the survivor to have to pay the cost. So what we're able to do is we charge the university $20 per kit per student, both to men and women, because we are creating a psychological deterrent on campus. Right now, the barrier to reporting is incredibly high. No one wants to do it. And on college campuses, it's even above 77% of people don't report. It's 95%. And so we're starting, and our go-to-market is being colleges. We're piloting in the fall with the colleges that are even open. Talk about pivoting and changing things. We definitely had to do that in COVID. But we're entering the market that way to ensure that survivors are not paying the cost of the institutions who promise to take care of folks like this are paying the cost for these services.
Got it. I mean, I would imagine, because this is such a great cause, you would be able to get some type of corporate sponsorship, to kind of, put together this kit, right? Especially if you're trying to keep the costs low. Even if someone's paying $20, right? Someone shouldn't be paying $20 for it. It should be a lot cheaper, right? Yeah, this is great. I think it's, would like to hear, more of the progression of this, important issue, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, sounds good. Well, Madison, thank you again. I know you're coming from the West Coast, right?
Yeah, I'm in Palm Springs, California right now.
Nice.
So 120 degrees.
Yeah.
Enjoy it while
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Right.
Training with us tonight. Feel free to post any other kind of message or information if you want to leave in the chat to the audience. Thank you again.
Great.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So yeah, thank you again. So tonight we are wrapping up the 1 minute pitch, and for next, would like to, before I wrap up the whole event, would like to do some forecasting for next event. So for all of you who are curious about what's coming for next, we are going to have a similar style like tonight. We call it online fireside, targeting more on the consumer startups. So we're going to invite Danny Tang, who is the founder and the CEO at Bokosu, a New York and Tokyo-based D2C subscription box and the e-commerce platform for Japanese snack good delivery. And also Jack Liu from Outer, a venture-backed outdoor furniture brand with a crowdsourced retail showroom platform. So both of them, they actually got significant growth in their fundraising. So we'll invite both of them to join us next week to share about their tips, strategy, and the learning points, how they pivot and maintain growth and fundraising in the pandemic area, as well as what else something we can apply in the future. So stay tuned, and if you want to join and subscribe right now, please follow our Instagram, our LinkedIn, social media, newsletter in general. We will update your newsletter. And if you want to subscribe to and register, save your spot for next event, please click on the button to RSVP. Is right there. So yeah, so that's it. So as we're wrapping up, thank you again for our amazing speakers tonight. Thank you, John and Jen, again for coming in tonight. It's a Thursday night, and I know you both have babies, and thank you again for those precious 2 hours. And also thank you to all the audience for your continuous support and joining us tonight. Please welcome, and you are always welcome to suggest any topics or questions in the future. Feel free to go to the website and submit a contact form. We're happy to curate an event that fulfill the highest demand, same as we do about questions. And yeah, so have a great night, everyone. Thank you for having a great time with all of you, and looking forward to the next event.
All right. Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.